What is happening, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Austin, and welcome to the much anticipated live roundtable AMA with Mr. Tom Anderson. Tom, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm good. Our first live AMA.
Yeah, I kind of feel like you're my co-host. You know, I used to go live 5 days a week on, I'll tell you, that was really, really exhausting, but used to do that. It was a lot of fun. Hey guys, do me a favor, because we are live, like the video, and subscribe. Why not? Like and subscribe. That's what the YouTubers say. So, all right, we've got, so let me preface this by saying we had a ton of questions, probably enough questions to, I don't know, we could probably sit here for 6 hours if we went through every single question. So we're not going to be able to do that, but here's the way that this is going to run. So we're going to spend the first, we'll call it roughly 60 minutes going through the submitted questions that you guys put into the Google form. And then the last 30 minutes, we're going to take live questions from you guys. Now, we are doing a giveaway. And the way that you can get in on that giveaway is put hashtag DEVvE into the YouTube comments. At the end, we're going to kick over to the giveaway tool, and everyone that did that is going to be entered into a drawing. I'm going to pick one person for $250 USDT. You ready to get after it, Tom?
Let's do it.
Let's do it, buddy. Okay. Question number one, and this is from a user named Zerdo. Can you explain all the details regarding the lending platform?
All right, so that's a pretty broad question, all the details to Cardia. But what I'll say is the lending platform, I think the way to think about it is it's a platform like Aave. And so a lot of what we've been building really does what Aave does, where you can put an asset up as collateral, get another asset like USDC or even other types of cryptocurrencies, and then you have a health factor, just like Aave does. And so a lot of the details, if you want to just understand more how our platform works and you're not familiar with Aave, just have a look at how Aave works. So a lot of what we're doing is similar to theirs. With one big kind of broad exception, we've implemented our system to work in a way that is acceptable to kind of TradFi mentalities. So we don't commingle funds with un-KYC'd funds. We don't run through smart contracts that have security risks and tax consequences. We have our theft protection, our private key loss protection. We have a privacy solution. So we check all the boxes that TradFi needs to see to get onto this type of platform, but really still take a lot of the innovation and just ingenuity of the DeFi space, combining DeFi and TradFi. So.
Excellent answer. Okay. So kind of along these same lines, because I think this is going to play a role in the lending platform. I am Clow asks, can you tell us about the deal with DUBank?
So in general, what we're doing with DUBank is building, I think, kind of a broad partnership. There's a number of areas that we're looking to work with them. One, for example, is implementing a stable coin because they're a bank. But as banks go, and they're a bank with a long history. As banks go, they've been a little bit more forward-looking and aggressive in the crypto space. And so they were the ones that kind of said, well, if you could create a lending platform that checks the boxes that TradFi needs, we would be interested in working with you on it. And then they're also interested in working with us on the exchange. So broadly, it's just a great partnership. It's an established traditional finance entity. They have the mentality and kind of the guidance that helps us design our products the way many of our customers would need. And in that sense, they're our first customer. Ray Quintana, CEO of Dev Digital, it's running Dev Exchange. He's been kind of leading the interactions with them. Anybody who knows kind of business in Europe, things slow down in the summer, and so as people kind of get back, then I think we'll kind of kick into a higher gear with them. So,
excellent answer. All right, let's keep it going. So, Murat823, sorry if I said your name wrong, buddy. What earning models are planned for the Genesis NFT holders? Is simply holding the NFT enough to access maximum benefits, or will staking be required for additional privileges?
So some of the details on how we want to do revenue share on the ways that you utilize DEVI within our overall ecosystem within DEVIs, with the liquidity caches, where we bring in money, and users community can share, in the fees that we bring in through exchange fees, the lending fees, through market making activities with the liquidity caches, through a payment system, things like that. And so we've been designing a kind of an incentive structure where those that kind of follow the incentives share in that upside. So as we were looking at, one of kind of the big or the big ways that you could share in the upside is through the Genesis NFTs, and you just hold them. You don't have to do anything else. But then there's also, I wouldn't call it staking, but it's similar in nature. It's contributing is what we call it, where you contribute to the liquidity caches, and similar to staking, you could have lockup periods. And so if you have the lockup periods, then that increases kind of your pro rata percentage of fees, as does the Genesis NFT. So some of the details we're still figuring out, but we prioritize the Genesis NFT in how we were kind of figuring out the pro rata share. So
makes sense. And I know that we've got some questions a little bit later on about DEVIs, kind of how all of that works with locking or anything of that nature. So I know we're going to get into that for anyone that wants to know. All right. So next question. And if it seems like I'm rapid firing through these, I kind of am, because we got a lot of them.
I'm trying to keep my answers simple and straightforward.
You're doing a great job.
So that we can get through them all. So yeah,
your sound is good. Your lighting is good. You look like a pro streamer over there, Tom.
Yeah, I always, my camera comes up and I see you, and you've got the lighting just like down. So when I'm just on the Zoom, like it looks all right, but I always feel like, every time I'm on with you, I got to get my lighting better. So.
Oh, you're doing good. Doing good. All right. Just a reminder, put hashtag DEVVE in the comments to be entered to win $250. Okay. This is from Adam Adam C. Brown. I don't know. How is the value of DEVI FIAS held in the DEVI's liquidity caches set? Will it adjust in real time to the token price on Dev Exchange?
So that's a complex question, and that's not something we can hit kind of in this time frame. So again, I'll just give a high level perspective. In general, you have several different systems, I would say, running within DEVIs that interact with the exchange. And one of the systems is a market making system, for example. And so you have liquidity caches that have pairs of assets. But in a market making sense, you mainly just need one side of the pair. You need just the asset and the liquidity to run market making. So as you utilize those assets, then it creates changes in kind of the ratios between them, and you have to rebalance, right? So you could rebalance by adjusting DEVI or FIAS in those. Or you could have other transactions that rebalance. Similarly, if you have a payment system that runs kind of like in a similar nature to a DEX with liquidity pools in that case, and they have a constant K value, as assets come in and out of those, and you get instantaneous transfers through contingent transaction sets, then that adjusts the value. And with liquidity pools, you can have impermanent loss, right? In our case, what you can do is, again, rebalance through the market making activities as well. And then the lending system has balancing mechanics in it as well. And you can't just adjust the values of DEVI and FIAS, even though we have, again, if you kind of go into some of the stuff we put out, the liquidity oceans there, where you can, use them in kind of special ways that lets people, like one of the ways that liquidity oceans comes into play is you can earn off of DEVI at the same time that you're borrowing off of it as well, that kind of thing. And so there's some kind of neat mechanics that we have given the liquidity oceans, but you can't just use liquidity oceans and adjust prices, because you need, the point of each of these systems is they have to have balance. Anything in finance in general has to have balance, has to have Durman-strong, push and pull, things kind of fighting, and then you got to build the systems together where they balance each other. So it's kind of a complex system overall, but the end result is that there's lots of ways to earn, and you end up with I think really pretty prime ways of managing and implementing liquidity. So
all right, hope that answered your question. That was in depth, but I feel a little bit more confused by the answer. I gotta be honest with you, Tom. But
there's a lot of detail there, right? So
for sure. All right, so the next one is from user Forbenhot. I don't know. Do you anticipate all the major features of the exchange to all be active as soon as the site launches? And this is two-part. Specifically, do you think that everyone on day one of the exchange launch can immediately transfer their DEVI and other major crypto tokens to the exchange with instant fraud, theft, loss protection?
So when you say all, of the features, I think part of what we did is we shifted our roadmap, and there was a bigger, what we've kind of internally called the more monolithic release. And we said, rather than taking more time and more risk to get everything in at once, why don't we get more of a MVP, minimum viable product type of approach, and get some earlier things out? And that's in addition to specific progress we made on the lending protocol that I'm excited to share soon, that kind of thing. And so I think the way to think of it is we're going to have a set of features that's the minimum viable product, MVP type of mentality. And those features include, the bridging, between Ethereum and DevX. They include the fraud, theft, loss features. They include the ability to manage exchanges, the ability to have the lending system, have a nice wallet. And then the other kind of big category that I'm pretty excited about is how we're developing the S2 business. So the S2 business is the business in which other people can run their applications on the DevX platform. And so when people can build their own applications, there's going to be needs that are filled, right? If there's a need for a bridge into some other chain and we don't have the resources to do everything ourselves, other people can come in and do it. If there's a need to build, real world asset types of, tokenization, other entities can build that, and then those assets can trade on the exchange. And so it's going to be a pretty robust, launch. The MVP does have a lot of robust features. So generally the answer to the question is yes.
Okay. All right. Let's keep it going. I think your light seems to have dimmed a little bit. Not you personally, Tom, but I want to let you know.
my camera did a auto adjustment, so that's a little bit annoying. So,
man, damn cameras. All right. So Highlanda writes, does the token migration happen before the exchange is released or after?
So it'll happen at the same time or before. I think there's a good chance it could happen before. I think at a minimum it'll be at the same time. So
excellent. And not for nothing, but the public shard could play a role in how quickly DEVI gets bridged as well. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, that's part of the reason I say it could be before, because I could see some use and utility and need for a bridge earlier than the actual dev ecosystem platform launch. So,
don't get me going on the shard. All right. Evo CH92 says, along those same lines, when will we have access to the DeFi aspect of DEVI, DEXs, and the possibility to launch any project on the DEVI blockchain? Also, how will you address, so this is a second question. How will you address the liquidity issue for DEVI?
Yeah. Okay, well, two questions.
So
one thing I want to say, leading into this question from what Austin just said, is I want to do a little bit of a tip of my hat to Austin. So Austin is not just a pretty face for everybody out there. He's actually given a lot of kind of thoughts and comments and insights to me that I've been thinking on how we're implementing the S2 business. So Austin's got really a pulse on the crypto space, understand how it works. That's in addition to all his skill set, of being live and managing these things so well. So with that said, with Austin's and others' guidance and a lot of my thinking, one of the biggest things we're working on right now is the S2 business, and letting other people, run their applications on DevX. And one of the biggest things that I think this was a little bit of an aha moment. It's one of those things that's kind of duh in retrospect, but while I was away, I was spending some time, just thinking about where we are, things we're pushing forward on, what's the best way to do it. And one of the realms of thinking that and it was nice having some time away, so I was able to just kind of think, more than you get to when you just are doing the day to day. So one of the kind of realms that I was spending time thinking on is how do we, and it ties in with the whole theme of what we're doing, right? Managing the innovation and just creativity of the DeFi space, but integrating that with safe and security and trustworthiness that we represent. So how do we do that with S2 as well? And so one of the ways that we're looking to implement things is, rather than you have to start a business, commit to a shard yourself, have a bunch of upfront fees, that's not really the DeFi way of doing stuff. The DeFi way of doing stuff is, write a smart contract and get things going. In our case, we use RESTful API rather than something like Solidity, but the same concept. You just have RESTful API commands. And so what we're doing then is having the RESTful API commands tie in directly with DEVI and FIAS, where you can have a per API call that takes out a small amount of DEVI or FIAS and lets small projects grow without a bunch of upfront cost, lets people innovate, lets people kind of grow things in their own ways. And it also solves some of the philosophy problems of how overall you can get that business going and let people really kind of get grow projects that have a DeFi mentality. So it's a concept similar to gas, on Ethereum, but it's a little different. I wouldn't quite call it gas because it's not actually powering, the proof of stake, validators. But it also is DeFi enough that it opens up new ways of thinking about the whole ecosystem and the ways that we're running it, and other entities and ways we can bring people in. So I'm really excited about it.
I love that it just integrates DEVI at every step of the way. But the cool thing is, if you're a developer and you're trying to, we're getting off topic. Sorry. If you're a developer and you want to deploy a smart contract, like let's say you want to go, and I'm going to use Ethereum as an example, but let's say you want to go even open up a new UniV3 pool, right? For two new assets, $600. Guarantee you it will cost you $600 in gas to do that in Ethereum. And so people are used to paying some form of gas on various networks. But what's cool about this is the lion's share of it really kind of is going to come from the builders, not so much from the users. Am I accurate in saying that?
Yeah, I think in general, to me, what defines the DeFi space is just everybody coming in and building stuff, right? And then you think, let's build our system in that same philosophy. And a lot of our philosophy is that same kind of thing. People should be able to come in and do whatever they want and create the innovation that they want. Now, in our case, there's going to be a few areas that we have to have, some constraints. And really, we're a platform of trust and safety and security, right? So all of the shenanigans that happen with rug pulls and stuff, like you need to have a platform that doesn't have that. And with the TradFi, the world's traditional financial institutions and the world enterprises moving full speed into the crypto space now, the platforms that are going to survive are going to be the ones that act and build things more responsibly. But that said, there's plenty of room for innovation and for people to work within kind of legal constraints, but build what they want to build. And so by implementing it kind of this way, I think we could just grow things in a massive way, and I could see it really snowballing, right, where it just gets bigger and bigger. So.
Well, this was an important topic, so I wanted us to dive into it, but I'm claiming it now. Tom and I, we're going to bring back Tech Talks with Tom. We're going to talk all about the public shard that is forthcoming.
Yeah, that's worthy of its own full session. So, yeah.
100%. Okay, cool. Let's keep it going. Toll Booth Willie, my brother. Thank you for all your work that you do around the chats.
Yeah, I know Toll Booth Willie.
Yeah.
All his support. Yeah.
Can you talk through and explain where the Swiss SRO and CASP VASP licenses fit into the broader regulatory journey?
So similar to how I kind of ended that last question, when you're moving into a regulatory compliant platform, and even other people building applications, they're going to have to maintain their own requirements in a similar way. If you want to move digital assets around, most jurisdictions have a concept of a VASP or something similar, where they've in the last few years have kind of thrown together, this is how, if you want to operate legally as an entity here, you have to follow these rules and you have to get a license to do it. And so with the exchange and with the Dev ecosystem platform broadly, we have to do what everybody else in the crypto space does. You have to get a VASP license. So that's another area that Ray is driving. Ray's been kind of pushing forward on the regulatory side of things. So he would be able to answer details more than I can. But I obviously know the high level kind of concepts. One thing I think that's neat about the way we're implementing things is regulators like what we're doing, and I think it's going to lead to some real competitive advantages. Like we spoke to Swiss regulators, and they said you don't take custody when you're managing trades. In most centralized exchanges, and Austin and I have talked about this before, they really act more as brokerages than kind of traditional TradFi exchanges. And so the Swiss government said, like, if you're not taking custody the way all centralized exchanges do, then we could get you licensed, and you could be the first kind of regulatory compliant exchange in Switzerland. And so we're not definitely set on doing that. I don't. One of the things I always have to be careful on these is, Tom said this or Austin said this, and people jump into. I'm more using it as an example, right? So what we've found broadly with regulators is they like our approach, and it opens up ways to distinguish ourselves from the market, and it allows ways to kind of get approvals and a level of approval quicker than I think others can.
Wonderful. All right. So we have some follow-up questions also from Toll Booth Willie, who is a legend. Thank you for saying that, Mal. How does the partner exchange integration actually work? Are we talking about back-end connectivity only or co-branded product offerings?
So in general, a lot of what we're doing with our large traditional finance partner that we haven't been able to announce, I can't give a lot of the details on. So unfortunately, we're still moving through kind of getting things in place. And the problem is we're not able to announce them yet until we get kind of that some of the checkboxes that they wanted to see, including the VASP, for example. And so I can't go into too many details about exactly what all that entails. I'll say this as a broad concept. It's an integration of our platform and their platform, and it's the first time that their platform has some pretty compelling characteristics given the unique features that our platform has. So that's as much as I can say at this point.
Roger's going to be snipping that one and distributing it. I can see it now. Okay, let's keep it going. Hey, this one's just kind of a personal one for you, Tom. What excites you most about what's coming next? Something the community might not fully appreciate or expect yet. Also from Toll Booth Willie. Yeah,
I think the thing that I feel most excited about right this moment is this new per API call DEVI and FIAS, transaction cost. So soon as that light bulb kind of went off, and again, it's a little bit like, duh, like, why didn't we think of that before, right? Because just a little bit of history, we looked into building the S2 business in the past, and we were doing it in kind of a TradFi way. And as a company, we've always kind of had one foot in the DeFi world and one foot in the TradFi world. And I think that's really served us well with how the world has moved. So we've had this kind of particular focus for 9 years now, and the world finally caught up to us, and all the world's big companies are moving into the to the DeFi space. So our philosophy and the way we build our technology is suddenly much more relevant than it was 5 years ago, right? Like timing's been almost perfect, where we're kind of hitting these milestones now as the world is really changing. And so we hired. We were building this S2 business with a traditional kind of mentality. We went out to a sales organization. They go out to other medium-sized businesses, SMB, small and medium businesses, or even some enterprises, and you try to get them on board with putting their work onto a blockchain. We were just too early, because again, it's not until the past 6 months, maybe even 3 months, that the world really is heavily moving into the traditional finance world is moving heavily into the crypto space. And so it was a tough sell. And so the S2 business really kind of felt like, well, we need to build our own first party applications. And so fast forward to now, and we've hardened, DevX. It's at a point now where we could spin up shards very easily. It's a point now where even on a given shard, it'll have good throughput. So we have a lot of people sharing on one shard. And then you have this per transaction per API call DEVI or FIAS expense that just lets everything grow in a new way. The reason I'm answering this question, this is one of the things I'm most excited about, is because I think it will lead to many others growing on the platform. And when anybody that's building on a platform, they have to decide, like, well, am I going to spend my resources on this platform versus another, right? But when you look at some of the advantages we have, do you build on a platform that checks the boxes that TradFi needs as TradFi is moving heavily into the space? Like, it's a good investment, moving into the future. Do you build on a platform that's built around a RESTful API, so that you use regular web developers instead of having to hire a team of Solidity developers, right? So it's going to be an easy way for a lot of entities to kind of build on it. And then, do I want to build on a platform that has fraud protections and theft protections, right? So we have unique advantages that I think people will want to build on and start creating. And then the other thing I think that's happened is we're kind of coming in at a time where you have a RESTful API that's easy to integrate with, and then you also have a lot of these platforms that exist that could pretty easily build a bridge from their services over to ours using the RESTful API. And so again, I think the whole thing could just really snowball. And then when you look at how all of that ties in with the exchange and the DEVVE ecosystem platform, it leads to many more assets and real world asset, tokens being added to the platform. It adds to more liquidity, more interactions between other systems. It's very synergistic. So the way everything is all coming together right now feels, pretty exciting. So
wonderful. And I'll just cap that off by saying, just coming from the crypto world, there are a lot of things that crypto does, maybe not ideal, but there are a lot of things that crypto does right. And we have hundreds, if not thousands, of case studies to show, what works. And I think the public shard and to put the whipped cream on the top, with the DEVI API calls is so important. But the public shard is such low-hanging fruit to demonstrate who we are, what we do, and to change from, you were talking about the sales organization doing outbound to try and bring people in. If you have a popular chain, you don't need to go outbound. They will come inbound. It'll just be obvious. And so that is what I'm most excited about. Even though you didn't ask me, I'm going to tell you. All right, let's kick over to Rufus's question here. Are US users allowed to access
another legend in the community?
Yes.
So sorry to interrupt. I didn't hear the question.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
To throw that in. Yeah.
So are US users allowed to access the platform? Really good. Really good question.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, that's a pretty solved problem. So we'll have to figure out exact details around it. But generally, yeah. Can there be some constraints in any given jurisdiction versus other jurisdictions? Probably, so you have to kind of figure it out. But in general, now U.S. citizens work on Coinbase. They figured it out. If somebody else has figured it out, then you can do it as well. And also, we don't have kind of the SEC trying to push everything in the crypto space down now. And so you don't, you could be doing everything right and know that you would win in a lawsuit, but you don't have the money to fight in a lawsuit was kind of the old, go back a couple years. And now you don't have that kind of frivolous risk. So now I think we're at a point where if you run your company properly, you talk with lawyers, do things as you're supposed to, you're going to be good. And so we'll be able to have U.S. citizens take part on the platform.
Wonderful. And with the SEC dropping, their inquiries against Uniswap or I don't know if
Ripple just ended recently. I mean, it was kind of dying down, but there was machinations that it was like a week ago that it officially ended. So.
Yeah, and we don't even take, again, it comes down to, I think custody is a big part of where this leads. All right. So another question from Rufus, and I think it's one that a lot of people want to know. How is yield generated through DEVI in the liquidity caches? What do users need to do to earn it? And is there any risk of impermanent loss?
So that is part of what we talked about earlier. So you put liquidity, you put assets into liquidity caches. Liquidity caches earn in a number of categories, and then we've designed a incentive system that adjusts your pro rata share of those kind of earnings on fees. And so some of it is you put liquidity in, and like a big part of all of it is you put liquidity in, then liquidity is used in the system, which is why people should put into it and why then they could share on the upside of it. So I think we've generally kind of hit that question.
Okay, cool. Next one, Legendarius, another legend around the chats. Where do you see both Forever and Dev Digital 5 years from now? What's your conservative and optimistic scenario for DEVI and separately Dev Exchange?
So I feel like I want to put the little asterisk with the lawyer. These are forward-looking statements. You can't rely on them, and et cetera. But in general, like this is Ray and I have been building this. We feel that we've been building what, again, the world is now moving towards. So I see us becoming, so again, with that little asterisk that the lawyers like to say, if all goes as we hope and plan, I see us become one of the big financial institutions in the world. And I see a lot of the world's transactions running our platform. I think we've solved problems that need to be solved that others haven't yet. And so I see our platform, at least we've thrown our hat in the ring to become, one of the world's big financial institutions. So.
Excellent. Okay. Next one, also from Legendarius. Interesting question, and I'm interested in your answer. It's kind of long, so give me a second to read it. Why the need for the FIAS token? Is there any technical or technological difference between it and DEVI? What does it do that DEVI can't? Wouldn't it have made more sense to just use more supply of DEVI and have it fulfill the liquidity cache role for gaming and metaverse also?
So DEVI and FIAS had different philosophies in the beginning. DEVI was more focused around trades and exchanges, and FIAS was more focused around ecosystem and interactions, I guess I would say. And so some of the original design around FIAS was around video games and blockchain gaming. But even even at that point, I still envisioned it more around, ecosystem types of interactions. And so a big part of where I see both of them is being both used in the system in some of the other innovations that have come since then, like the liquidity caches. So I think in that sense, they're similar, right? Both can be used for, creating some of these mechanisms in the liquidity caches, utility in the mechanisms in the liquidity caches. But then I think one of the places that FIAS is going to grow and expand is in, building blockchain-based social media, blockchain-based interactions. Like a big part of what I see blockchain really doing for the world, and I'm generally an optimist, right? I think it's a technology that's going to remove middlemen. It's going to let people control their own value, let people get the assets they need to fulfill their potential. And I see FIAS becoming much more integrated in systems that do those types of things. So I think some people have thought of DEVI is a primary, kind of token. FIAS is another, kind of under it, like gold and silver. I don't think of it that way. I see FIAS as something that is equally large in scope and vision, and probably focused in slightly different areas. And I also see the two areas being very synergistic. A lot of how we drive users and user retention and viral growth, will be the platforms and utility that we use with FIAS. A lot of ultimately where we expand with DEVI, with direct exchange, is complementary to that as well. So they're complementary tokens.
Excellent. All right, let's keep this going. This user says not on Telegram. Okay, cool. What's your plan to drive real trading volume and user adoption on DevExchange within the next 6 months? And how will you ensure liquidity is sufficient for retail and institutional users alike?
Yeah. So that's a good question. That's kind of the heart of the business. So one thing I'll mention is, again, Ray is the CEO of DevDigital. DevDigital, has the license to grow DevExchange. So that's all. This is more a Ray question than me, although I'm, head of strategy for DevDigital, and Ray and I work together closely on everything, right? So, so with that said, a big part, I think, of how I envision we can grow is through partnerships. So with one foot in the traditional business world, one foot in the DeFi world, taking the innovation of DeFi, but taking our own kind of innovation on top of that creates trust and safety, security, and checks all the boxes that TradFi needs. I think we could start to bring in large TradFi partners, and large TradFi partners have large customer bases, their own large, capabilities for creating liquidity and managing the system. So I think a big answer to that question is the partners that we're going to bring in. I think a lot of how Ray envisions growing the business is going to drive a lot of the business growth and address those needs, for growing things. And then I'll also add, I think, S2 and the way we're planning on growing and expanding that. Again, I think people will see opportunity. They'll come in, port their businesses or start their own new businesses, fill in gaps, and then you have the whole ecosystem grow. So, I think between traditional finance partnerships and growth on S2, it will address those business needs.
Here. Okay, let's keep it going. I'm glad you mentioned the public shard. I was going to have to say something if you didn't. All right. Same user, how do you plan to attract and retain institutional partners? And what specific regulations or licenses are you actively pursuing to position DEVI as a trusted bridge between traditional finance and crypto?
So the licensing isn't as much, what drives that trust. The licensing is just, from a TradFi perspective, you do what businesses do. You follow the rules and you do it in a way that people understand. But it's not the main thing that drives getting these partnerships in place. The main thing that gets these partnerships in place is folks that know how to do it. Like that's what it is. Like, it's not easy building enterprise relationships. I've done it a lot, and I have nowhere near the expertise that Ray Quintana and Will Stewart have on our team. So you have guys like that, and guys like that also know how to hire other people that can do it. So when this, I would say this is a good question in that it's one of the biggest competitive advantages I think we have over everything else, most everything else in the DeFi space, because the DeFi space, the blockchain category, is going to be dramatically different in a few years. And anybody that doesn't understand that needs to do their homework, because it's inevitable, right? And so you have the Circle IPO, you have everything that BlackRock is saying, you have all of these other kind of TradFi announcements, you have what Robinhood is pushing forward on, just at a basic level, just with stable coins and US regulation moving there. Every single business in the world is going to have to hold cryptocurrency at a minimum in the form of stable coins, because that's how payments are going to be made for businesses in the future. Everybody in the world is getting into the crypto space, so it's going to be dramatically different, right? Most of the DeFi world doesn't understand the TradFi world, doesn't understand their mentalities. And most of the TradFi world, even though they get into it, they don't understand the mentalities of the DeFi world, right? We're in a unique position having 9 years of 1 foot in each. And so I think the next phase of where things are growing, where things grow orders of magnitude bigger than they have in the blockchain space, I think a lot of DeFi companies are going to stumble because the world is going to change quickly, and they don't have the skill set to work with all of the new money and customers and businesses coming into the space. So that's a big place where I think we have a big competitive advantage, because we know how TradFi thinks, we know how they work, we have experts that know how to put those business relationships in place and partnerships in place. So I think that's a place that we're going to excel.
Excellent. I just want to remind everyone, so the last half hour, we're going to be taking live questions. If you have those questions, our producer is on stage, but you can't see him. But he is logging any questions that come into the comments. So feel free to drop them, and we will tee them up in the last half hour. Okay, let's keep it going, my friends. That was a great question. Oh, this one's a great question. What level of performance and scalability can our matching engine handle under real market conditions? Have we conducted proper stress testing to simulate realistic traffic spikes? That is from Brian DevvE. Good man. I love that question.
Yeah. Brian is one of the most sophisticated thinkers on our platform. He understands, really understands. I can tell in his questions. The concepts that we're working around. So a little bit of a hat tip to him as well. So it is a good question. I think one of the things that gives me the most kind of comfort myself in our ability to scale, I'd say 2 categories. One is a lot of the way our system is built around traditional systems, right? And as you need to increase, the scale around that, that's a solved problem. You can hire engineers to do it. And so a lot of the interactions, that come into the blockchain go through what we call the IN, which is the interface over the blockchain. And then the blockchain itself, the second thing that gives me comfort is, like, we've never even come close to maxing out its capabilities. Like it's like a shredder. You just put stuff into it, and so the bottlenecks that we've had are more kind of the higher end interfaces that come into it. And the higher end interfaces, again, we can manage that. So I'm comfortable that we'll be able to grow as we need and scale as we need.
Great answer. Okay, let's keep this going. A cryptonomist says, where do you see envisage the greatest demand to come from for the tokens, DEVI, that are part of the circulating supply? TradFi, retail investors, TradFi, institutional investors, DeFi. He goes on and on. But I'll just cap the question there. Where do you see greatest token demand coming from?
So that's a $100 question, right? So I could see a number of areas. I think part of what you do when you're early stage is you build your systems where you have a plausible path forward to revenue generation. You're comfortable, you can grow the business the way you want, but you also have to be nimble. And if a particular area starts to take off, you have to be able to focus in on it and be opportunity driven, things like that. So I could see, again, with some of the recent thinking and some of the recent developments, and Bill Anderson and our team really driving the S2 business and getting the public shard, is almost ready to go out. We're very close to that. I could see, DEVI's demand being driven by feeding into that system. We have the lending protocol, and you could see where that, like, if you have the first Aave that's TradFi acceptable, you could see tons of people, coming into that, right? And then all the transactions, run through DEVI as well, DEVI and FIAS, right? And then you also can imagine where, the exchange starts really growing in demand, because you check boxes with safety and security and private key loss protections and theft protections that all these new people coming into the space need. Like, what's going to happen is a TradFi company is going to have a hack, kind of like what happened with Bybit, recently, and like everyone's going to freak out and go like, oh my God, we can't have, these risks, right? We've got a solution to it, right? And so I could see people really jumping on and needing to utilize the aspects of the platform for that. So I'm not positive where the demand is going to come from. I wish I had that crystal ball, but I think we're well suited to really kind of grow where we get the most traction.
Wonderful. And I just want to, I'll take 20 seconds to point this out. When the public shard launches, right, and we've got DEXs and we've got, and DEXs obviously incentivize liquidity, and every pair is paired against DEVI, right? I've experienced this with, and a lot of people in DeFi have, with multiple other networks. Now that DEVI is being used for API calls, it's solidified as the official token of the network, which pretty much means anyone that's coming in with pools and lending and XYZ is going to be having DEVI somewhere integrated. That's going to be a huge demand driver, in addition to everything that Tom just mentioned. So, all right, let's keep this party train going. Dr. Coma says, I included this, just why not? Why hasn't Austin got the DEVI neon fixed? It's fixed, my friends. It is fixed. Okay. The next guy just put a period for his name, so I'll just call him period. What kind of partnerships are you entering into or planning to enter into with stock exchanges, banks, governments, etc.? What will they use the DEVI blockchain for?
I think there's a few categories of partnerships that we're building. So one is bailment partners. And Austin and I just recently did a talk where we were describing how the bailment system works. We have hard wallet companies we're talking to. We have stablecoin partners that we're talking to. Then there's market makers that we're talking to. There's other financial institutions that we're talking to, and other banks, right? And so there's a lot of different categories of partners we're putting relationships in place. And again, Ray's driving a lot of that, and he's excellent. I mean, he's a master of doing that type of thing. His career is perfect to kind of put those relationships in place. So lots of, I think, exciting things coming up in that sense. Okay,
let's keep it going. So this one's interesting. This is from Legendarius. He says, how does the non-custodial architecture pertain to liquidity caches and liquidity C? If those assets are locked to be used and devised, does that not mean that DevX entities are taking control, custody of those assets for the time being?
Oh, no, we're not taking custody of those assets. So this is one of the things that DUBank loved, for example, right? Like you put in Aave, you put your assets into the smart contract, and they are taking custody of it. And there's no doubt about it. There's no arguing it, and there's a tax consequence. That's a ramification of it, right? It is black and white from a tax regulator's perspective, if nothing else, right? So in our case, we've created at the core validation level locks that run on rules, right? And so if you get, and this is one of the things, again, that's very unique about our platform, unique about our capabilities to innovate, and things that distinguish us from everybody else. And these are big parts of the checkboxes that TradFi needs to see, right? So if you get a loan and you put up some collateral, that collateral sits in your wallet and then it gets locked, but it's in your wallet, and nobody can move it other than the rules around which you locked it, right? So if the health of the loan goes below 1, then you signed a transaction that you're locking in this way, and you signed a transaction that says if the health goes below 1, then it can be transferred out. But other than that, nobody has control of it. It's like a smart contract, but it's not a smart contract literally, because it's programmed at the validator level. And so that's one of the things that's really neat about our stuff. Like one of the things that I want to point out that this really kind of just makes me think is we embraced the core philosophy, I think ironically more than a lot of the crypto space has, of not your keys, not your crypto, right? On our platform, we've put kind of layers of protections that you control, but it's all built around a philosophy of you're in full control of your assets, and nothing happens unless you sign and agree to it, that kind of thing. So yeah, we don't take control. That's what's neat about it.
Wow, I don't want to get too excited about that, but smart contract risk is a major thing, and even for forked protocols that we feel are hardened on other networks, that smart contract risk still is there. And if they put a new function in, or they did anything that opens that up, your funds are gone. Like if somebody comes in and exploits that, we simply don't have that risk.
And tax consequences. That's another example. So, and when you start getting into the TradFi world coming into the space, those things become very serious, very real, and distinguishing features that are make it feasible or not. Right? If you have a system that you lose 30% of your value to taxes, and a system that you don't, just through a mechanism, nothing else is different. Like which are you going to use? So.
Very big deal. And I just want to clarify, you had mentioned, okay, if the health factor drops below 1, your funds would be liquidated per the loan. But obviously if you pay back the loan, right, that's another instance where the lock can unlock. Is that how it works programmatically?
Yeah. So all that is the same as DEVVE, right? So you can add funds into it to keep your health factor. It's something that is easy to manage. And so that the innovation that DEVVE showed in how you create loans and not having to have regular monthly payments, just a system that's built around this kind of health factor concept, was brilliant. First time I saw it, I was like, oh wow, this really is a better way to do things. But you're in full control of it, on our platform. So.
I do want to ask one other thing, just on the same question. I know people are going to wonder this. So in the liquidity caches, though, that DEVI is being used to facilitate trading on Dev Exchange. And so how does that work if it's still sitting within our wallet?
Yeah. So if you contribute, there's a couple things. I guess maybe in that question I didn't address everything. There are situations where you contribute your assets to a liquidity cache, but there's not much risk on it. It goes into liquidity cache. We have those balancing concepts that I described earlier, and then if you ever want to pull your assets out, you can pull them out. If you put them in and you lock them, then you can increase, your pro rata share of upside, things like that. So in that case, when you contribute it and then it's being used, then it is taking custody and being used, but you're getting paid for that privilege to use your assets. So in that case it is, but that's not a negative. That's a positive. It's like you're putting money in to help make the system more robust, and you're getting paid some of the upside that the system creates.
So we're not taking custody to allow, like, I wouldn't let you take custody of my Bitcoin to allow me to trade on the platform, right? I would always have custody of the wrapped version of that on chain. But if I make the choice to contribute to the liquidity caches, in that instance, obviously that's going to be.
Then the liquidity cache has custody because it needs, and this is algorithms, right? And right. It needs to be able to use the assets to put all the oil in the system that makes the whole thing work, right? And then if you want to get your assets out of it, you can. But then if you leave your assets in, then you share in how those assets are used to make the system work. So
we got some tech talks to do, Tom. We've got some breakout videos to do. All right, let's keep this going. That was a really, really good question. Okay, and I'm just going in order here, guys. Upon the launch of Dev Exchange, will DEVIs be up and running at that time?
So DEVIs and Dev Exchange were kind of combined into this Dev ecosystem platform, concept. So bits of it are going to be up and running. Bits of Dev Exchange are going to be up and running. That's the MVP concept that I described earlier. So the answer that I gave earlier on what that MVP is the answer to this as well.
Okay, let's keep it going. Gee whiz, my brother. You mentioned briefly in a video that there may also be a credit for time staked on the DEVI Launchpad. Is there any updates on this?
Yeah, so we hit that today. So we have, you put your assets in, those assets are used to run the system, you share in that upside. If you contribute your assets and lock them into that contribution for a longer time period, then you can increase your pro rata percentage of what you get.
But what about people? Oh, sorry, Tom. You may have been going to answer this, but what about people that are currently on the DEVI Launchpad?
It is what I was about to jump into. So one of the things that we want to do, and this is like one of the things I pride myself in is fairness, doing the right thing, right? That kind of thing. And so you have supporters that have been supporting us, and they staked onto the Launchpad. Some of the things that we were planning on the Launchpad, took a back seat and got put on a back burner with some of the other exciting things that were growing, and they should have, right? Because when we first were getting that when Forever was first getting that exchange or the Launchpad platform going, we didn't have the concepts of DEVIs and all the concepts of sharing with DEVI and everything. So we've expanded a much more robust kind of set of utility for DEVI and FIAS. And so people that contributed to it, though, contributed in good faith. There are supporters, and as a company, again, like, we always respect that. So what we'll do is we'll figure out, some type of just calculation of time that's been staked, credited into the new system if you move assets over into the new system. So,
okay, lovely answer. Appreciate that. All right, so the next one is from N1C Cam. This is a great one. This is a great one. Okay, just wondering why DevStream is managing their crypto exchange through BitGo rather than DevExchange. Is this a temporary measure until DevExchange is live?
So, in general, Austin, saying to everybody, Austin and I went through our Bailment, solution, and BitGo is a leading candidate there. It's one of the companies that we're talking to, and they've got very robust APIs, and they're top notch. They really have got their stuff down. And so when you're talking about custody, there's entities that do that really well, like BitGo. When you're talking about Bailment, where it's a wrap token, Bailment includes a custody piece, but the Bailment side of things, the custody is just one piece of it. And you also want to have the mechanisms that represent getting the assets back from the custody if the platform itself isn't able to manage that, for whatever reason, and give users those extra protections. So the fact that DevStream is using BitGo is great. BitGo is very, very good at that. Now, part of what I'd like to see with DATs, so the category of how DevStream is, building a treasury, is a digital asset treasury company. So that's what I've seen those called DATs. I think we could provide capabilities to DevStream and other DATs as well, where they could take their assets, put them into our platform in a form where you still have a custodian that's trustworthy, but then it's wrapped, and you get the fraud protections and theft protections that you and the private key loss protections that you don't have elsewhere. And again, one company is gonna have a theft in the TradFi space, and everybody else is going to freak out, and it's going to turn into a massive thing, and we've got a good solution for it. So I like the tools we've been building with where the world is moving.
Awesome. And great question as well. Insightful. All right. The next one is from Lee the Bull. Lee says the updated roadmap contains a lot of releases and launches. Are you confident the team has the bandwidth to deliver on all items efficiently?
So we cut back a number of things on kind of earlier roadmaps, and then we also shifted some priority towards, again, S2, where I think we could get community and other entities and partners building things. There was a contract I looked at yesterday of a group that wants to build with S2 that's going to build kind of a neat piece of what I think is going to be compelling for our platform and how they can interact. I think there will be more of that. So overall roadmaps are, guides. You can have slipping on time. You can have things that you put in, things that you pull out. But I think in general, the roadmap we put out is realistic to get out, and I think we're going to be able to get everything out on that timeline. So.
Good deal. And second part to this question, he says, I understand a VASP license is timely to obtain and is not something that can be pushed through. Will the partner announcement still be pending regulatory approval since it is in the roadmap?
Yeah, so the partner announcement is pending regulatory approval. VASP licenses, depend, the timing on it and the mechanisms depend on where you're getting them. And you can get a license in different areas and then operate in areas that are separate from where you're licensed, depending on how that regulatory area allows. But lots of people are incorporated and regulated in one country and then have customers from other countries, right? That kind of thing. But sometimes you need to actually have an entity in the country. So depends, right? All this depends. And so there are ways that you can get it done quicker. There's even places where you could buy a company and get up and running very quickly. But then there's ways that you can, as I was describing earlier, try to be the first in a particular regulatory environment with the first kind of regulatory features, which generally takes more time, but our characteristics can let us do it faster than others. So that's part of what we're figuring out. And again, this is another area that Ray is, kind of spearheading and managing. And so I feel like we've got it in hand. We've got our arms around what we need to do, and there's various options we're looking at still.
Okay, excellent. So next one from Brian DevvE. Brian, thank you for your excellent questions. Do we have a backup plan if the VASP approvals take longer than expected?
I think we've got ways that we could, we've got jurisdictions that we could do things faster if we needed to. So I would say in that sense, yes.
Okay. Next question from Brian. When will a demo platform be available for early supporters and Genesis NFT holders to test?
Could you say that again? Platform available for?
Yeah, so I think what he's asking, and it kind of assumes on the monolithic release of Dev Exchange, he was asking when would it be open for beta testers?
So we have the S2 business, which is different than the exchange platform. So the S2 business is close. So Bill's been getting that going, and we're very close to being able to put it out, release the API, and let people start pounding on it, and seeing if it's going to be a fit for their business. And then there's the Dev ecosystem platform. I think depending on the marketing team's kind of guidance, we could show a demo of it, pretty soon. And it's a pretty robust demo at this point. I've been excited about the progress we've been making. I think people are gonna be like, wow, you've been doing a lot. But then that'd just be a demo that we would show like on, like something that Austin and I do. And then people actually using the platform, we'll probably have beta testing. So you can look at the release in Q4, and beta testing you always do a bit before that, so. Something
All right,
like that.
Excellent. Thank you, Brian, for the questions. Let's see. Okay. Another one for Genesis NFT. We know about that. Is DEVI considering supporting tokenized ETFs or regulated financial products in the future?
So that would be a good partnership with our S2 business. Find entities that want to grow those types of things. And our platform, I would say, is perfect for that type of thing because, again, like the locking mechanisms that I described, that's a tool that you could use in a lot of kind of traditional finance, methodologies that they're going to want to see. The theft protection, the private key loss protection are things that, like, you can't manage stocks on a platform and then have these big hacks that everybody's used to. Like, oh, they lost $1.5 billion. Oh, it happens in the crypto space. Like, it's crazy, right? And so you can't have those types of things. So you have to have, once you start trading, things that are highly regulated, like securities and stocks, you're going to have the characteristics that our platform has to make it happen. Because what will happen is regulators will get to a point and they'll say, well, what happens if your platform has a hack like Bybit had? And they don't have a good answer for it. And they're like, we can't do that. We can't move ahead on that. But if you're on the DevX platform, they would say, well, they can ahead of time set it up in this way where, there's time constraints on it and you can't move the assets out, but you can get lending on those assets that have time constraints, right? And so you have all these mechanisms that make it feasible. So, we don't have direct plans ourselves for tokenized securities or stocks or things like that, but it is a place that we're having discussions with potential partners. And I think S2 is a place where others might come to us and say, we need to build a platform with these characteristics, and yours seems to be the only one that fits the bill. So
good deal. Okay. So I do want to name that we're at the hour mark. So pretty soon we're going to kick over to live questions. You have a hard stop, right? At the 1.5 hour mark, Tom?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Good deal. So there is one more question that made its way in here that I just, well, God, there's a lot more, but this one I want to ask because I think it would be on a lot of people's minds. So this one's from Roger TJE, and he says, if I understand correctly, and I'll just read his question exactly as he wrote it. The bailment partner is the potential weak point in the overall design. We would therefore need the following information about that partner. Will that information be available? And what he names is identity and regulation, bailment contract essentials, insurance coverage, security, and governance as the information that the bailment partner would provide. And will those be available?
So the answer is yes. So again, we're building our bailment system around TradFi needs. So TradFi is going to say they're going to delve into all these things, and so that's all going to obviously be public and readily accessible. And the lead into the question isn't, I would say, quite right. You know, the bailment partner is the weak point in the platform. So when you have native tokens, you don't have a bailment partner. So I think over time, especially with the S2 business and other entities being able to come in and mint their own tokens and mint their own, platform, assets on the platform, then you have native tokens, you don't have a bailment partner. So I think over time, I think bailment will become a system of the past as, well, I mean, you'll still have situations where you have assets on one platform that you move over to other, like Bitcoin. Bitcoin's not going to go away. But the importance of bailment, I think, will be lessened over time, because I think more and more tokens will be native on platforms. So want to make that point. But then the other thing is, we plan to have the bailment partners have insurance. Like, that'll be one of the criteria on it. And so you have several safeguards where you have, I think the way to think of it is attack vectors, right? You can lose your private key. You can have somebody get access to your private key and steal your assets. You can have the platform go under. You could have the bailment partner fail, and you could have the insurance around the bailment partner's failure itself fail. And so there's several layers of protections in our approach. Nobody else has this, right? There's several layers of protections on each of those pieces. So there's no perfect system, right? You're not going to build a system that's going to get rid of theft, and loss and stuff. But we built a system that has multiple levels of protections where somebody who's careful can prevent those things. So.
And I think it should be noted that, you'd mentioned earlier, we were talking about the BitGo question, and these digital asset treasury companies are largely, they're okay, we're accumulating, but then we're going to a custodian to manage this for us because we don't want to screw it up, right? So TradFi is wanting this to begin with, and so it does kind of fall right into that sweet spot of we've got the crypto side, but also where institutions would want to see. So I appreciate you.
Let's mention real quick on that DAT concept. That's one of, I think, our big potential businesses coming up is, if you have a DAT, digital asset treasury, so you're a public company and you buy a bunch of cryptocurrency, you can just hold on to it, maybe stake it, but in general, you have your custodian holding onto the assets. When you have a system like DEVI's lending platform, then what we could do is go to those companies and say, rather than just having your assets just sit in your treasury, not doing anything, why don't you put them on to DevX, earn a yield off of them, in DEVI's, have extra theft protections and private key loss protections that you don't have. We still have the bailment partner holding the underlying transactions, but now you have better safety on your own. Like, if a DAT company loses their private key, or gets tricked with a fake website to transferring it all out, they have the ability to do that, and the bailment partner isn't going to prevent that, or I'm sorry, the custodian isn't going to prevent that. So if people can move onto our platform, earn a yield, and have extra protections, I think we have a product that we could use with a lot of different DAT companies. So.
Excellent. Good deal. Okay, so we are at 1 hour, 7 minutes. That means we've got 22 minutes for this next section. Now, we've got 21 questions that I'm seeing over here. Before we do that, I want to tell you guys how the giveaway is going to work, because this is important. I'm going to screen share here after we do these questions. If you're the winner, you're going to have 60 seconds to actually put your Telegram handle into the comments on YouTube that are flowing up, so that I know that it's you, because the only thing it's going to pick is your YouTube username. If you don't answer in 60 seconds, I'm going to pick someone else. So make sure you're watching live at the end of this thing. Okay, let's get over to the comments. Let's just rapid fire and see how many we can get through. Bob the Face says, is there still no deadline or estimate for when the exchange will go live?
So we put out the roadmap, and the roadmap has a definition of when it'll go live. So we have it as Q4 of this year.
Okay, excellent. Is the lending protocol still coming for Q3?
I don't think it ever was coming for Q3. So the word "still" isn't quite right, I think, there. But it's part of what's coming down the DevvE ecosystem platform launch on Q4.
Okay. We're going rapid fire. Here we go. Same person, different question. Will the announcement of the big partnership we've been waiting for be announced early Q4 or towards the end of the year? Do you think we might miss the bull run?
That's a funny question. That's the epitome of the crypto. It's kind of when you have kids too, same kind of thing. Like I know you said this, but so
yeah.
we said it's Q4, and that's all we could say right now. So
okay, good deal. Next is let's see. If large companies are going to buy an OTC, will the additional liquidity be added for DEVI from those OTC deals for their market sell, or will it be another OTC sell?
I don't fully understand this. I think this maybe is referring to DATs. In general, digital asset treasury companies buy and they have it as a treasury. And what that ends up being then is a company, people that want to get exposure to the crypto space, but don't want to directly buy a cryptocurrency. They can buy, stock in MicroStrategy or stock in DevStream or stock in any of these other 100, DAT companies now. So what that means then is the people are buying into those companies to get access, to get exposure to those assets. And so DAT companies in general, they're buying them as part of a treasury. They're not actively trading it. They're going to hold them long term and that kind of thing. So
okay. So they're not going to dump on our heads is basically, and I gotta, just to his point, liquidity has been such a pain point for, our token up until this point, but once it's on our own chain, I mean, this is really important to note. It's not going to be a pain point anymore, right? We're going to have very deep liquidity, especially for the DEVI token. All right. This next question, in regards to the rewards yield for contributing to the, I assume he means liquidity caches here. Do we know what the percentage returns will be?
So that's not defined yet. We have a feel for it. I think the feel for it is what other, DeFi platforms do. So I think it'll be competitive in the space and a great way to earn. So
cool. All right. Next one. I'll just read it. Will DEVI be listed on Binance or Coinbase in the future? Thank you, Mike Jones.
Yeah, hopefully.
Okay. Next one. Rigo says, what is the status of the VASP license? When was it requested?
So at this point, we're exploring, again, I think strategic options on the best path forward. And there's a lot of moving pieces where you want everything to all come together. So that's more of a Ray question, but that's kind of the high level answer.
Okay. C3K says, when can we see some AAA games added to the Litcraft DFE?
So a big part of where Litcraft has kind of shifted over time is more towards that kind of community and social media, types of interactions. And so we built a task system in where people can come in and do tasks. And I think a big part of what we're wanting to do kind of from where we are now is to have other people create content, for the platform broadly, tie it in with our guilds, system, and then overall start integrating more artificial intelligence types of interactions into the system as well. So I see kind of some of my own personal, I think of myself as an innovator. I think of myself as solving tough problems. And I think integrating AI into blockchain and integrating that within the Litcraft platform is a category that I want to start exploring a bit more. So we shifted a bit of what Litcraft really kind of represents. And I think it's a better model because it's more broadly applicable and more synergistic with the other areas that we're building.
Excellent. Okay. Next question is from Brian. Ethereum had a 10-year uptime. I don't know. While other L1s like Solana have faced multiple outages, what has DevX's uptime record been to date, and what design choices ensure its reliability long term?
So our uptime has been very solid. I mean, we've got, like six years now of uptime. I think there's been a couple times where we've been down for a day or two, which is unacceptable. When you start really getting to third parties doing it, but that was a while back. One of the things that we're adding into our system internally, we call the validator restart, and then that will allow us to have really kind of full uptime. So I think uptime is going to be one of the features for us, the way we've implemented things. I think we're going to have better uptime than really anybody else.
Excellent. A quick question for you, just for my own edification, maybe. I recall years ago on another network, one of the larger validators that had more than 33% of the voting power on the network went offline, and it slowed block production down to non-existent. And that was a DAG-based architecture. And I don't know how similar we are to that, but how does that sort of thing, you just mentioned the validator restarts on DevX. I guess there's no hierarchy of validators on our network, is there?
Yeah, so it's a different philosophy. So the way we run our validators is more algorithmic. And so we don't have decentralized governance, but we have decentralized operations. And people say, is it decentralized? And they don't really distinguish between that. And a lot of times when people say, is it decentralized? What they're really asking is it public? Like that's the heart of what they're really kind of looking for in that answer. And so a lot of the details there is a bigger conversation, but in general, the way we run our system, you can hot swap validators and assure uptime, and at the same time, again, check all the boxes that TradFi wants to see, have a public shard where everything is immutable and auditable, and really solve the business needs that type of system provides.
Excellent. Okay. Next question. We did touch on this, but it's in there. So being a layer 1 token, will there be a migration off of the ETH chain in the future? Yes. And what will that look like?
So I expect that, again, we'll have a bridge either before the ecosystem platform launches, given potential needs for S2, or just at the same time that the ecosystem platform launches. But yeah, we'll make an Ethereum DevX bridge.
Okay. Next one from Rufus. How far along are the patent applications for DEVIs?
So everything is submitted, and it just takes time. I think there's some particular gems in the DEVIs patents, and things that I haven't seen elsewhere, which is an indication that it can be a patent that gets issued. So I'm optimistic about our IP there. I'm also very optimistic about the contingent transaction set patents that we've submitted. I think that's going to be one of the great inventions in finance in general. I think people 100 years from now will look back on it and say, there were Visa, there were credit cards, right? And then there were ETFs, right? I think contingent transaction sets is one of those kind of big financial inventions that's going to stand the test of time.
Excellent. Okay. Next one. When can we start trading commodities on DEVI platform?
So a big part of what we're doing with the S2 business is giving people the ability to bring on real world assets. And so as people bring on real world assets, they'll be doing it on DevX, and everything's integrated, and any assets that are created on on S2 will be able to work on our exchange. So there is some regulatory, aspects of that question that one needs to be careful of. But I think with the combination of the exchange and the S2 business, those two together, that's the path to get to the answer to that question.
Excellent. Good question. All right. Next one from Rufus again. Which fiat on-off ramps will be available, and in which countries? Man, they're really drilling you for details here.
Yeah. So I don't know that for sure. When you look at kind of where we're initially starting, some of the initial partnerships that we're working with, a lot of it's European. Raise, entities are based out of Europe. Ray lives in Europe, chunks of the year. And so I think we'll have euros. You'll have one would have any type of platform like ours would have to have US dollar stable coins. A lot of the crypto space operates in Asia, right? So stable coins there is good. So I'm not positive the answer to that yet, but through our partnerships, we'll have a broad array that the types of things you just need to get it going. So.
Okay. Excellent. Same from Rufus. What are the three biggest, I think you touched on this. What are the three biggest usage drivers you expect to bring daily transactions in the first 12 months?
Yeah, I think at this point it would be S2, the exchange, and the lending platform. I think those are the three potentially biggest drivers. I also think the Litcraft platform and FIAS, what we're doing in the social media site, I think there's a lot of, and the way I'm going to be integrating AI into that, I think that could have a lot of growth too. So.
Very cool. I love this next question from Lef P. Will there be a liquid token for stake DEVI liquidity provider that is compounding rewards?
I don't have plans for that right now, so we can look into it, but not. I mean,
I think he's referring to LP tokens. Is that? I believe that's what he's referring to. Same way with old Uniswap V2, which we've kind of graduated past LP tokens in DeFi these days. But good question, Les.
The actual mechanism that we use is probably going to be our own. So I don't think it's going to be. I don't think it's going to be the way that you get a token on Uniswap that represents your ownership. I think it'll be mechanisms that you contribute, you sign a transaction, and then the representations of that is held, in your wallet on our platform. So I don't think it's going to be quite the same thing. I mean, as the question's asked, I think it's compelling to maybe have something that's more tradable, in that. So it's a good thought, but I haven't really kind of planned anything on that.
I can tell you what probably will happen, because most of your LSTs, your liquid stake tokens out there, are done by third parties. So if the DeFi ecosystem grows well enough, I could very well see protocols launching. Who knows? Maybe I'll launch one where it's essentially a liquid stake token where people stake through you, right, for a share of a piece of the APY, but in return they're getting a token they can still participate in DeFi. It's a hell of a good strategy. And the SEC just addressed it recently.
Yeah, I think a lot of that's feasible through S2, right? So things that people find compelling, other businesses can see the opportunity, tie in with our platform, our rewards, and sharing, and implement it. So, yeah.
Cool. All right. Next one we've touched on, but it's here. Can we expect the ridiculously small, love the adjective, DEVI ETH pool to be fixed or removed as the transition between Ethereum chain and DevX chain will be happening?
Yeah, so that's more a question for some of the folks on the Forever team. They're managing DEVI. I know, talking to Phil on our team, for example, he has plans around liquidity, and he's very sophisticated fellow and really kind of understands that. So I think the general answer is yes, we're working to fix that. And then, as Austin pointed out, once we're on our own platform, we have more control of it. We can bring in partnerships. It becomes less of an issue as well. So I understand the issue, and I do feel it's going to be fixed as we get our platform up and running.
Okay. Thank you, Adam, for the question. All right, we got a couple minutes. We're at the buzzer here. Let's see. Question: what are you most excited by this year and also next year? From Craig.
We hit that earlier. So I think the S2 business, and then the launch of the ecosystem platform, and then where I'm kind of expanding FIAS and the Litcraft application and bringing AI into that. Those are all things that I'm kind of personally excited about.
Okay, I love this next one. It's kind of like an interviewer asking you, what are your biggest weaknesses? But what's the biggest fear you have, strong words, regarding the roadmap or the general progress of DEVI?
So I think a lot of what we have planned out is just a matter of execution. We've been running the business for 9 years. I think sometimes you have delays, sometimes you have pivots, sometimes you have a piece that moves out and another piece that moves in. All of that's par for the course. So I wouldn't really describe a large amount of fear or anxiety around that. I think the heart of the question, though, or the kind of intent of the question is, the world has been, kind of slow to move towards our original vision until recently. And now all of a sudden, everything's happening quickly and lots of big players are getting involved. So I think our technology is particularly relevant right now. It's almost like if you've been building an LLM model, and you had it ready to go in 2022 as the AI world was. I feel like we built a lot of technology that's in a category as big as AI is. Traditional finance moving into like changing all their mechanics of how they implement their systems and what stable coins are going to represent, right? It's arguably bigger than what AI represents. And we've been building, I would argue, the best technology in many ways. So the fear is we need to make sure that there's a window of opportunity. We need to make sure we take advantage of it before that window of opportunity closes, right? So it's been a lot of working into this point. We're well positioned, and we need to execute now. I do think timing's good, though. We have the S2 business coming out. We have our platform coming out. We have a lot of the features that these companies need, and we have the types of business people that can access those partnerships. So I'm confident and feel good where we are.
Yeah, good deal. And just if I could speak on that point for 1 second, crypto moves so incredibly fast. Anytime a need shows up, there's already, 20 platforms that are trying to solve that need. And I think one of the beautiful things that we have coming is the S2 business. The public shard is going to get the things we've been talking about into the marketplace so people can touch and feel and hopefully not smell. You can't really smell them, but a few of the senses apply. And I think that's going to do a lot for our brand. It's going to do a lot for user growth. And I think it's just going to do a lot for us. So, all right. Next one, can people can people in New York start staking? I'm reading that in the way that I think you meant it, Raphael. Apologies if that's not the way that you meant it.
Yeah. So if it like a lot of rules are enforced in the U.S. through kind of the New York regulatory environment. So the SEC just recently described that staking and staking activities weren't considered security. And so I think the answer to that for us is going to be the same as what others do. What generally is allowed are the things that we're going to allow as well.
Wonderful. All right, one more because I know you've got a jet. Let's see. Actually, this is a really good one. Dap Brian coming through. Can you explain how private and confidential transactions work on DevX and how they support our use cases and benefit our customers? Great one.
Yeah, so that is a good question. I think to go through that we need half hour. So I might suggest that the privacy solution broadly, is something that Austin and I would schedule separately. I think one thing I'll say is we thought about privacy early on and submitted patents on it, like 8 or 9 years ago, and submitted a PCT filing, so an international patent filing, and got the search results from the examiner, and they said there's no prior art on it. And they're like, really? That's never happened to me before. So the idea of having traditionally compliant privacy in a DeFi context, we've got very broad patents around that. So I'm excited about what we can do on the privacy side of things. And I don't think the crypto space understands how important privacy is for the TradFi world, and especially with how much of the TradFi world is moving into DeFi. It's going to become more and more of an issue.
Wonderful. Tom, you hung in there for 90 minutes with me, and I greatly appreciate that. Hey, guys, this is your last opportunity to put #DevvE in because we're going to spin. And Tom, if you need to drop off, you are more than welcome to do that at this point because I'm going to have to hang out and get usernames and stuff from people.
I am going to drop off. So thanks, everybody. Was great going through it. We could do more of these as well if there's demand. And as always, thanks, Austin. You're awesome at what you do.
Yeah, my pleasure, buddy. Thank you so much. All right, everybody. If you put #DevvE in the comments, hang in there because I am in 3, 2, 1 going to hit this. Now, listen, if you win, right, we've got 121 entries right now. If you see your name pop up, you got 60 seconds to put your Telegram handle into this chat. Otherwise, I'm going to redraw because otherwise scammers will DM the hell out of me. And it's just a pain in the butt. So, all right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Colby Patterson, my brother, put your Telegram handle in there in the next 60 seconds. And in the meantime, I'm going to sit here and just stare at you as if I know what's going on. If he does not put his name in there in the next 60 seconds, he can't win. And we're going to redraw. So Colby Patterson, put it in there, my brother. Put it in there. You got, man, I should probably have a timer going. Otherwise, I'm full of crap. Let's see. Colby. I don't see Colby yet. All right. I'm going to pick again in just a couple minutes here, Colby. If you jetted, that's all right, my brother. That is all right. Okay, I'm going to pick again. Here we go. Let's see who's going to win now. Bert Boss. Great freaking avatar, man. The final boss at Ibiza. Bert Boss. If you are in here, put your Telegram handle into the YouTube chat. If you don't put your handle in the YouTube chat, we're going to keep going. There he is. All right. You are the winner, my friend. I have saved your handle. I'm going to hit you up and you are going to get $250 in USDT. Hey, for everyone that tuned in, thank you so much for doing so. If you have watched all the way through, do me a favor, like the video, subscribe to the channel. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. And hey, maybe I can get Tom on for another live stream. I enjoy doing this with you guys, man. I appreciate it. So that's it. We're going to get the heck out of here. My name's Austin. I'll catch you guys on the next video. Take care.